Hello, hello, everybody. Just gonna wait for some people to hop on. Hey, Lindsay. I am flying solo today. Mama Carla is out sick, so I don't know if Miss Beulah's able to make it. You made it, yeah. You made it just in time to see me do it all by myself. Which is totally fine. This is a Bible study. Hey, John, that was put on my heart to do. I had done it years past with a church group, and others have been able to join me to help me in reading. I feel like my thing is crooked, or maybe I'm crooked. I am sitting on my bed, but oh, yes. Hold on just a minute. Let me see if I can figure out how to fix this here. Hold on just a second. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing. Gonna figure my life out here. Hold on. There you are. All right. I made you a mod, Lindsay, so you can help me out. If there are comments related to the Bible study, any questions, any like additions to the word, definitely pin those up for me so that I can keep an eye out. Hey, honeybee. I think I saw Britt too. Yep, a little bit, Britt. It is a little crooked. Okay, good. This is a new, this is a new stand. And I don't know. I think it's just crooked. I don't want to mess with it and knock something down. Anyways, so we're just going to be a little bit crooked. Gonna change my name to just a little bit crooked. Been good, honeybee. Caught bits and pieces of your lives recently. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to catch the your prayer journal live. I missed it last week because we did not get home from church in time for that. Thank you. This is our church shirt. Pretty much everyone that goes to my church has a shirt. Someone had them made year and a half ago maybe, and we all have one. So anyways, yeah, I need a calendar. I can usually remember honeybee on Sunday afternoon because it's like I get home from church and we have a little bit of time before she goes live. I don't always get the notifications, so I hear children. No, y'all cannot be in here. No, you're not jumping on the bed today. No, because I can't hear. No. Hold on. No, you cannot be on my bed. No. Out. Tell your sister. Jess is still not back home, so there's kids again. No, you're not jumping on my bed. No, ma'am. No. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. No, do not touch. You need to go in there with Maddie. Go on. Thank you, ma'am. I'll see you later.
I love you.
Yeah, they are wild. But anyway, she is her daddy. They all are their daddy's twin, unfortunately. They all look just like him. So anyway, Jess's thing isn't over till 8, and then they're like an hour away. So it'll be a while till he gets home. So I'm flying solo. I mean, my teenage daughter's here, so she's helping out. But kids might pop in and out. There might be wild screaming. Don't mind that. We are on week 4 in this book, the Women of the Bible book. Is this mirrored for you guys? I thought I had turned the mirror on, but it still looks backwards. Yeah. We have 5, and so with 5 it's wild. But anyways, this is the book. It's not mirrored. I thought I had turned that on. Oh, there goes my thing. Holly Renee, get down. Well, now is it? There we go. Renee, you don't need to be in here. You need to go in there and eat. You're going to be bad and jump on the bed. And we're not jumping on the bed.
You want to go get something to eat?
I'm going to pop your bottom because you're not listening. Go. Thank you. Oh, Renee. That actually, my mother-in-law came up with the name Holly because we couldn't come in agreement on a name. And then Renee was one of our friends' middle names. So that's why we picked it. It's also my sister's middle name. So, hey Raven. So yeah, Elle, you can still stick around. This is just learning about women of the Bible. We spell Renee Renee. And that's just like how our friend spelled it. So that's how I picked it. So anyways, we're on Rahab. There isn't as much reading this week with Rahab. So I guess it's okay that I'm flying solo and doing all the reading by myself. John, you can definitely stay. Everyone can learn about women of the Bible. It is not, we're not talking about like, you know, crazy women stuff in here. We're just learning. All right, so we'll start reading. It's Rahab, an unconventional hero. We're taking a leap in time from the story of Leah and Rachel. God changes Jacob's name to Israel in Genesis 32, verses 22 through 32, as he moves his family to Egypt. About 400 years later, all of Israel's lineage are enslaved there. God chooses Moses to lead more than 600,000 Israelites to the promised land he has chosen for them. After God leads the Israelites out of Egypt, they wander in the desert for 40 years. This is where Rahab comes into the picture. It is time for the Israelites to claim the land God promised them. Their first stop is Jericho, Rahab's city. Rahab is an astute woman. She is a prostitute and an innkeeper, and her professions enable her to be privy to information from all over. When Joshua's spies arrive, Rahab senses that something very big is about to transpire. She has to decide quickly how to react. God chooses Rahab, a woman who is courageous, bold, savvy, trusting, and proactive, to play a key role in his plan. Her choices lead her to becoming a hero, a person of action and faith, and many years later, kin to Jesus. All right, so the first day is titled The Turning Point, and we are going to be in Joshua chapter 2. It's just verses 1 through 7. And I'm using Jess's Bible. It's the Christian Standard Version for anyone that's following along. Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 men as spies from the grove, saying, "Go and scout the land, especially Jericho." So they left, and they came to the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, "Look, some of the Israelite men have come here tonight to investigate the land." Then the king of Jericho sent word to Rahab and said, "Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, for they came to investigate the entire land." But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. So she said, "Yes, the men did come to me, but I didn't know where they were from. At nightfall, when the city gate was about to close, the men went out, and I don't know where they're going. Chase after them quickly, and you can catch up with them." But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them among the stalks of flax that she had arranged on the roof. The men pursued them along the road to the fords of the Jordan, and as soon as they left to pursue them, the city gate was shut. All right. So, Joshua, who became the leader of the Israelites upon Moses' death, sends 2 spies to infiltrate Jericho. They find themselves at Rahab's inn. Rahab is probably used to encountering visitors from outside Jericho, but in her conversation with the Israelites, she likely senses that God is in their words. Rather than turn the spies over to the king, she takes them to her rooftop and hides them. She knows hiding these men means risking death. The king of Jericho learns the men are staying with Rahab and demands she turn them over. She doesn't. Instead, she demonstrates great bravery and creates an elaborate plan to help these strangers who spoke of God. The Lord has chosen Rahab, an ordinary woman, to carry out his will, and Rahab's faith grows as she risks her life to be closer to the God who was growing in her heart. So anybody that hasn't been in any of these studies, they're supposed to be like, it's a 12-week study and they break it down day by day. We're doing one whole week in one live. So I'm going to read the section that goes along with the verses for each one. And then each section has a reflection questions. I'll read over the questions. Some of them I will talk more about and answer. Or if anybody has anything to add and wants to put anything in the comments, we can talk too. Reflection question 1. As a woman who operated an inn, Rahab likely enjoyed rare independence for her time. She had a lot to lose by hiding the spies. What do you think made it worth the risk to her? That one is a little bit tricky because I don't really think it's like clear so far in the Bible. But based off of the commentary for this day, it appears that she can kind of see that God has sent these people there, and she is working off of that discernment that she has, that they're there for a reason. So that's where she felt it was worth the risk. This is reflection question 2. Rahab is a woman with humble origins. What does her becoming an unlikely hero tell us about who God calls to serve him? Do you consider yourself to be an unlikely hero, and why? So honestly, Rahab's story shows that God can use anybody. She wasn't really, a follower at that point in time. She, they in Jericho had, false idols and were, making sacrifices and all that stuff still. My cat's just turned the litter box lid off of the litter box. But she was still, God still used her. So God can still use anyone that he wants to, whether there's somebody who professes that they're for him or not. He can still use anyone. Hold on. Holly, go in there, please. I need to finish. Then you're going to lay there and you're going to be still. Shh. That's enough. No. No kicking, no jumping. Lay down and be still. All right, Maddie, you might need to get your cat because he was in the litter box and it collapsed on him. Burnett, oh my goodness, she just closed my Bible. Hold on, guys. No, you're out. Go. You're being bad. You're not tearing my Bible up. Okay. Maddie, I can't see good to read. Okay. Back in business. All right, day 2 is going to be in Joshua chapter 2, just verses 8 through 11. Before the men fell asleep, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know the Lord has given you this land, and that, hold on, turning the page, that the terror of you has fallen on us. And, okay, that's enough. Nope. Hold. Out. Go on. I'm locking you out. Okay. Sorry. I hit the tripod on the way out and knocked it down. And now I got to get it. There we go. Anyways. Let's start over. Let's start back at verse 8. Before the men fell asleep, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land and that the terror of you has fallen on us, and everyone who lives in the land is panicking because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 Amorite kings, you completely destroyed across the Jordan. When we heard this, we lost heart, and everyone's courage failed because of you, for the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. yeah, we had to say bye to Holly because she was in the mood to be destructive. And if you have toddlers, you know exactly what that mood is. This is that time frame before bed where we don't know how to act and we lose our mind. Anyway, this is day 2, the proactive leader. After Rahab sends the king's men away, she explains to the Israelites all that she has learned about God. Rahab tells the spies that she has heard about the miracles of God. She knows their God was the creator of heaven and earth. Something in her heart tells her God is giving Jericho to the spies and their people. Based on what she has been told, she also knows her city will be destroyed so that no idols, altars to false gods, or people who worship these things will be left behind. If Rahab is terrified by this knowledge, she does not let it show. Rahab reveals her vulnerability as she shares the fear her people have of these men and God. But we don't see her begging for her life. Instead, she acts as a leader by hiding the spies and talking with them about God. It must have been difficult for Rahab to reach beyond her own culture and religion, but she seems to feel that something is missing or wrong, and it is her opportunity to find a new path. We can all relate to the difficulty of following our instincts when it would be easier to stick with something familiar, even when we know it isn't working for us. And girl, Holly is, for being the 5th child, I tell people all the time, she makes it look like I don't know what I'm doing, that I have no idea how to parent, because she's just wild all the time. But when this is talking about being difficult to follow your instincts when it's against something familiar, that is a big one, because it's really hard sometimes when we hear God's voice tell us we need to do this or we need to do that, or this is where we need to go, or we need to do this Bible study every Saturday at 7 o'clock. To do that when it makes us a little bit uncomfortable, or when it's going against, other things that we want to do. Like, I'll be honest, today I was gonna post something and say I'm not doing the Bible study today because Jess isn't here. I was kind of enjoying a little bit of time with the kids. There's a break in between my classes. Classes ended on Thursday and new classes start Monday. And I was kind of enjoying my weekend, just getting to chill. And I was like, I'm not gonna do the Bible study. But I texted Jess earlier and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna do it. And he goes, if God's told you to do it, then you need to be obedient. And he was right. God has told me to do this. Even on the weeks when I had pneumonia, God was like, I'll give you whatever strength and breath you need to get this done. And I haven't, this is only the 4th week. Well, technically 5 because I did do Proverbs. But, it's been 5 weeks now of this women's Bible study on Saturday, and I was not gonna miss it again. So, and you know how hard that is to be like, oh, my flesh really don't want to do this today. I really just want to do something different. But that obedience was kicking me. These are the reflection questions this week. Number 1, we do not hear any words spoken by Rahab in this passage. Why do you think that is? Have you ever gone through challenges you had no words for? What helped you? Oh, I was reading the wrong section. Just kidding. I skipped a page. I was like, wait, we did hear Rahab because she was talking. Let's go back. Reflection question number 1. In speaking with the Israelite spies, Rahab processes out loud all she knows in her heart. How does sharing her thoughts help her form a connection with the spies? Are you a conversational processor, or do you keep things inside? How do you think talking to others can help you understand what's in your heart? I'm most definitely a conversational, talker, outer, processing things. And a lot of times I'm talking out loud to myself, or if you've been around, you've heard me talk about my prayers, more of a conversation. Sometimes I'm just praying a conversation with God, and I'm like, this is where I'm at. These are the things I'm feeling, and just talk it out. And even though he already knows all these things, it just kind of helps I also have like one friend who I've never met in real life. We've actually met on TikTok, and she lives thousands and thousands of miles away, and we just send voice messages back and forth. And honestly, a lot of our voice messages is us just kind of expressing things that have gone on in the day and how we feel about stuff. And it really helps to be able to say all that stuff and know that like the person on the other end isn't judging us. They're not gonna come back at us with, well, you should have done it this way, you should have done it that way, or whatever, unless we specifically ask each other like, hey, I need your advice. For the most part, we're just venting and talking, and that's amazing to be able to do that, because it just kind of helps you work through your thoughts so that it's not just all up here jumbled up in your head. Sometimes if you say stuff out loud, you're like, okay, well, that I sound really ridiculous right now. Let's rein it back in. Question number 2. Rahab is vulnerable with the spies. Do you find it difficult or easy to be vulnerable? How do you feel when people are vulnerable with you? So this is, okay. Most of you know, I am big about being a real person, not, trying to pretend to be somebody that I'm not, acting like I've got it all together and I got it all figured out. That was one of the big reasons for Jess and I doing the couples study that we're doing on Monday nights, because I don't want people to think that like we're perfect because, he's preaching and I'm his wife and we've been together for a really long time, because we're not perfect at all. And so I'm really big on being real, and that takes a level of vulnerability. Now, where I'm not comfortable is emotions. I'm getting a little bit better with that. I don't like to cry or, I guess, show that I'm like bothered by certain things. But I'm working on that. I'm trying to learn that like it's okay to have emotions, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to be, upset. You don't have to be perfect with your emotions either. So that's the vulnerable that is harder for me. All right, so day 3, we are in Joshua chapter 2, and we are in verses 12 through 21. Yeah, exactly. I'm a lot of times the person that a lot of people come to, and so that makes it even harder for me to like show emotions about stuff, because I feel like I have to be like strong for everybody else, so then I can't show that anything like bothers me. I need some water. All right, Joshua chapter 2, starting in verse 12. Let me find it. Now please swear to me by the Lord that you will also show kindness to my father's family, because I showed kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father, mother, brothers, sisters, and all who belong to them, and save us from death. The men answered her, we will give our lives for yours. If you don't report our mission, we will show kindness and faithfulness to you when the Lord gives us the land. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, since she lived in a house that was built into the wall of the city. Go to the hill country so that the men pursuing you won't find you, she said to them. Hide there for 3 days until they return. Afterward, go on your way. The men said to her, we will be free from this oath you made us swear, unless when we enter the land you tie this scarlet cord to the window through which you let us down. Bring your father, mother, brothers, and all your father's family into your house. If anyone goes out the doors of your house, his death will be his own fault, and we will be innocent. But if anyone with you in the house should be harmed, his death will be our fault. And if you report our mission, we are free from the oath you made us swear. Let it be as you say, she replied. And she sent them away. After they had gone, she tied the scarlet cord to the window. I was having a minute there. I was making sure I didn't miss anything. Day 3 is the crimson cord of faith. In this passage, Rahab seems able to read the two spies, and she boldly goes for what she wants. Rahab asks them to swear on God to spare her and her family, because that oath is stronger than just asking them to save her. She understands these men hold God above everything and are unlikely to break their oath. Her faith grows in God because she puts her life on the line. The spies negotiate by ensuring Rahab keeps silent about their plan of attack. They put into place a means to save Rahab and her family with a crimson cord signifying where to find them. This cord and the men's oath are the only things keeping Rahab's family alive, or so she thinks. Little does she know she has been part of God's plan this whole time. Rahab's boldness, kindness, and faith are hanging from the scarlet cord in her window. Reflection question 1. Rahab risks everything, including her family members' lives, to know the God of the spies who have come to her inn. What would you be willing to risk to achieve a closer relationship with God? That is a deep question. Everybody think on that one, because that's a deep question. She was willing to risk her entire family to save them for this relationship with God. And that's a big one. Like, sometimes we'll be like, oh, I'm willing to give up, my favorite kind of movies, or my obsession with, this musician or whatever. Lindsay sent you. Hi. Thanks for coming. Thank you for inviting people, Lindsay. But I mean, she was willing to give up her whole entire family. Number 2, Rahab puts her faith in total strangers. How do you feel about trusting others, especially people you don't know? That is also a big question. So trust for me can be very hard. Some of you know this is like a touch, just a drop in the bucket of my testimony. My mother, I was born to a teen mom. She abandoned me when I was about 2.5, and took my baby sister with her, left me behind. And then she disappeared for a few years. She came back around the time that my grandparents were giving custody to my dad, so I was about 5. And she got me 1 weekend a month was her visitation. Well, she proceeded to not protect me, and I was the victim of some acts by a boyfriend of hers. And I was maybe 6, between 5 and 6. And when it was brought to her attention, she denied everything, and basically it was well, then I don't want her to come over here anymore. So I didn't go over to my mom's house anymore after that. And still to this day, one of my sisters brought it up to my mom just recently, a few months ago, about why she didn't protect me or get rid of this man that she had other children around. And she basically said that I was a liar and I was making it up. But so because of the issue with my mom, I find it really, really hard to trust people. And I mean, because if you can't trust the person who gave you birth, it's really hard to trust other people. And pretty much a lot of the people in my life ended up letting me down. My stepmother physically abused me growing up. My dad multiple times was kind of in the room and didn't do anything. I was taken out of the home once when I was 10 or 11 to stay with grandparents, but ultimately they said that my dad and my stepmom were good people because they had good jobs. We were upper middle class, and they sent me back home where I was abused for more years. So, it's really hard to trust people when everyone in your life growing up really wasn't very trustworthy. And so, yeah, I find it really hard to trust people. So a lot of times I'm the person who's on the outside, just kind of watching how people interact with others, and, any little thing that they do, I'm what is what was that for? What are their motives behind that? So I do find it really hard to trust people. So yeah, that's a big one for me. Just kind of threw it all out there for you guys. Told you, real. Yeah, trust. I think a lot of people have, especially if you have a parent who betrayed your trust. That's because they're your parent. They're supposed to take care of you, and that's really hard to get over that when it was a parent. Yeah, Lena, I'm with, like, once you break trust, it's really, really hard to get that back. All right, day 4 is Joshua 6. So I'm gonna have to turn here. It's Joshua 6, and this is a longer section. This is chapter 6, verses 1 through 25. Ugh, get this big old heavy Bible. Yeah, see, I feel like so many people know that struggle, and it's sad. And that's just a part of, I haven't really ever shared my testimony much. Ever really at all. And that's just like a small portion of it. There's little fuzzies on the Bible driving me nuts. But, once you start talking about stuff like that, you realize how many other people were impacted in the same way that you were. So, I've always felt like my testimony wasn't, like, not worthy, but that my testimony wasn't as big as other people's. Like, literally, Jess had a life-saving thing happen to him in 2020 with his brain cancer. And we have many friends who, like, used to be on drugs, and now they're totally clean. And I feel like my testimony isn't like that. Like, there's not this one thing that was, like, the turning point from, like, taking me out of this and putting me in this. And so I always feel weird about sharing my testimony, because I feel like it's like a novel, really, that I can't just pull out a section and only talk about that, because there's just so many things. So I was actually supposed to share my testimony on another creator's live, like, back in June. But it was while we were traveling, and so it wasn't really a good time. And I backed out, and then I never rescheduled with her. So maybe one day I will get on here and I will give my testimony, but it's a long one. It's a long one. There's just so many things that, like, led to where there's not just one thing that I can pick out and be like, this was it. This was the turning point. This was the moment. You know what I mean? All right, we're in chapter 6 of Joshua. Now Jericho was strongly fortified because of the Israelites, so no one leaving or entering. The Lord said to Joshua, "Look, I have handed Jericho, its king, and its best soldiers over to you. March around the city with all the men of war, circling the city one time. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry 7 ram's horns trumpets in front of the ark. But on the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, while the priests blow the ram's horn. When there is a prolonged blast of the horn and you hear it sound, have all the troops give a mighty shout. Then the city wall will collapse and the troops will advance, each man straight ahead." So Joshua, son of Nun, summoned the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant and have 7 priests carry 7 ram's horns in front of the ark of the Lord." He said to the troops, "Move forward, march around the city, and have the armed men go ahead of the ark of the Lord." After Joshua had spoken to the troops, 7 priests carrying 7 ram's horns before the Lord moved forward and blew the ram's horn. The ark of the covenant followed them. While the ram's horns were blowing, the armed men went in front of the priests who blew the ram's horns, and the rear guard went behind the ark. But Joshua had commanded the troops, "Do not shout or let your voice be heard. Don't let one word come out of your mouth until the time I say shout. Then you are to shout." So the ark of the Lord was carried around the city, circling it once. They returned to the camp and spent the night there. Joshua got up early the next morning. The priests took the ark of the Lord, and the 7 priests carrying 7 ram's horns marched in front of the ark of the Lord. While the ram's horns were blowing, the armed men went in front of them, and the rear guard went behind the ark of the Lord. On the 2nd day, they marched around the city once and returned to camp. They did this for 6 days. Early on the seventh day, they started at dawn and marched around the city 7 times in the same way. That was the only day they marched around the city 7 times. After the 7th time, the priests blew the ram's horn, and Joshua said to the troops, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city, but the city and everything in it are set apart to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute and everyone with her in the house will live, because she hid the messengers we sent. But keep yourselves from the things set apart, or you will be set apart for destruction. If you take any of those things, you will be set apart the camp of Israel for destruction, and make trouble for it. For all the silver and the gold and the articles of bronze and iron are dedicated to the Lord and must go into the Lord's treasury." I'm making sure I don't miss where I'm supposed to stop. Okay. So the troops shouted, and the ram's horn sounded. When they heard the blast of the ram's horn, the troops gave a great shout, and the wall collapsed. The troops advanced into the city, each man straight ahead, and they captured the city. They completely destroyed everything in the city with the sword, every man and woman, both young and old, and every ox, sheep, and donkey. Joshua said to the 2 men who had scouted the land, "Go to the prostitute's house and bring the woman out of there, and all who are with her, just as you swore to her." So the young men who had scouted went in and brought out Rahab and her father, mother, brothers, and all who belonged to her. They brought out her whole family and settled them outside the camp of Israel. They burned the city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron into the treasury of the Lord's house. However, Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute, her father's family, and all who belonged to her, because she hid the messengers Joshua had sent to spy on Jericho, and she still lives in Israel today. Did I miss anything? No. All right. Day 4, an honored oath. It is time for war. The inhabitants of Jericho, including Rahab and her family, must be on edge as the Israelites spend 7 days marching around their city. I imagine Rahab and her whole clan constantly looking out the window, wondering what their fate will be, and hoping the strangers who took the oath to save them will remember the crimson cord. Rahab's trust is rewarded. The spies tell their leader Joshua all about Rahab, the courageous and faithful negotiator, and the oath they made with her. Joshua honors that oath and saves her family. Rahab and her clan are relocated outside the Israelite camp so that they do not have to witness the destruction of their city. Although Rahab's family is saved, her city is not. It is a victory for the Israelites and a complicated day for Rahab and her kin. Rahab's life as she knows it is over. Her town, her friends, and all of the familiar no longer exists. She chooses to stay with the Israelites. Although she is thankful she and her family were spared, she will probably face difficulties living with new people and new customs. Brave and fearless Rahab has to overcome many challenges as she assimilates into her new life. Reflection question 1. We do not hear any words spoken by Rahab in this passage. Why do you think that is? Have you ever gone through challenges you had no words for? What helped you find your words and get your footing? What brought you comfort? So here in this section, I don't think we heard anything about Rahab because most of it was about what was going on with the army and what they were doing. And even still, like, you know, once all that happened and she's like, they got to see these walls come down just by these men walking around the city walls and blowing horns and shouting. And then to see your whole city crumble, and then you know, like, what these men were telling me before is true. They are who they say they are. God did send them here. And she was probably speechless. Like, you know, this is real. And so that makes me think about, you know, times in my own life where, you know, I have been told by God or told by somebody else, you know, through God, that, you know, something was going to happen. And, you know, you kind of like take it to heart, you know, take it, put it in your heart, and you're just like, oh, okay, well, don't see any way of that happening right this minute. I don't see it. And then it like happens and you're just like, wow. One of those circumstances is, So back at our old church, this was about 3 years ago, our pastor at our old church was teaching us a sermon on persistent prayer. And I don't even remember what part of the Bible we were in, but it was on persistent prayer. And he passed out, because he is, because he's still a pastor, a very visual pastor. Like he likes to have visuals to go along with his sermon. So he passed out envelopes and paper, and he told us to write down one or two things that we've kind of prayed for here and there, but we've never committed to daily prayer. Thank you, Kate. Day in and day out. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to write some stuff on there. And at the time, our oldest son was about 16. He had gone through some church hurt at our church back home in North Carolina when he was about 11. And he stepped out of church at that point. Like, we couldn't get him to go to church anymore. And you know, when kids hit like those preteen, early teen ages, you're not really gonna like, our motto is we pick our battles. And I didn't want to continue to force him to go to church when he was so adamant about not, like it was hurting our relationship with him when we were forcing him to go. So he quit going to church. When we moved up here, he went to church with us like a couple of times around the time that Jess had his brain cancer in 2020. But then he kind of quit going again. And at one point when he was learning how to drive, he had told me, I asked him, I was like, why won't you go to church? And he was like, honestly, Mom, I don't think I believe in God. He was like, I know too much about science to believe in God. He's super, super smart, and he has a very scientific mind. And he's like, I know too much about science to believe in God. And so I had prayed here and there, help, reach my son, help him see that God is real, bring him back to church. I didn't think at that time that he had ever really like accepted Jesus to be his Lord and Savior. And so I was like, I'm writing him down. So first thing I put on my persistent prayer card was for my son to be saved and go to church. And then the second thing was I had been told at a New Year's Eve service back when I was 20 or 21. I was 21 because it was right before I had our daughter, and I had her right after I turned 21. But I had been told at a New Year's Eve service, it was prophesied over Jess and I, that Jess was going to be a preacher, and he would work with his hands until he no longer could work with his hands, and then he would become a preacher. And he worked in a factory at the time, and he worked for this factory. This factory is actually what brought us to Kentucky, until he had his brain cancer and could no longer use one of his hands. And he continued to work at the factory for a little bit, and then, he left back in September or whatever. But anyways, so at that point, Jess had never really preached. And that particular Sunday was, he was having to work. His work schedule was getting crazy. He could never make it to work on Wednesday nights. He could never make it to church on Sunday mornings. And so I was like, I'm going to put that on here, that Jess is going to be able to come to church, not only come to church, but preach. Yeah. I'm glad that you found us. And we're glad that you found us too. But anyway, so I put those two things on my card, and he said, now put that card in an envelope, seal it up, write persistence on the outside, and stick it in your Bible or wherever you're going to remember that this is going to be a reminder to you to pray for this every day, multiple times a day. Every time you pray over what you've written down in this envelope. So I did that. And I prayed on both of these things for over a year. It was over a year. And then Jess accepted his call to preach at church, and our son started going to that church. He actually was invited to play basketball there with a couple of the youth guys, and so he started going. And Jess was going to preach his first sermon at our church on a Sunday night, and a friend of ours was going to be doing music, and we invited our old pastor. And our son, our oldest son, had he'd either just gotten baptized or he'd already been saved and was getting ready to get baptized. I don't remember. I want to say he'd already been baptized. Yeah, he'd already been baptized. The only other thing on my persistent prayer card was that Jess got to preach. And so the pastor who preached us that sermon, he showed up, and I had told myself, if he shows up tonight, I'm handing him this envelope, because I kept it in my Bible. It's I'm going to hand him this envelope, and I'm going to tell him to open it. And he walks in, and he stays for the whole service. And at the end of the service, I was like, hey, can I talk to you for just a second? And I was like, I want you to open this. I was like, do you remember this sermon? And he was like, yeah, I remember this sermon. And I was like, I've prayed over this envelope every day, multiple times a day since that sermon, and I want you to open it. And he opened it, and he started crying. And he's like this, muscular dude. And he just starts crying, and he was like, this is amazing. That he got to see, hey Jamie, that he got to see what came of this sermon that he preached. And I was like, I want you to keep that. I want you to keep it, because you're the one who gave me the word, and I want you to see, what came out of what you said. So another little bit of my testimony. Y'all are just getting all the bits and pieces tonight. Hello, kitty. My cat is up here rubbing me. You can see his tail. And this is the one that doesn't love anybody, so he's being sweet, and it's kind of eerie. All right, so let's see. Yeah, so that was it. Anyways, so we're going to move on to the next section. This is day 5. We are skipping over to Matthew. So let me move my bookmark here. There are 2 verses, Matthew 1 verse 5 and Matthew 1 verse 16. So let me get those. Verse 5. I'm going to butcher these names. I'm so sorry. This is a lineage. Salmon fathered Boaz by Rahab. Boaz fathered Obed by Ruth. Obed fathered Jesse. And then we're skipping to verse 16. Oops. The cat knocked me over, guys. Sorry. 16. And Jacob fathered Joseph, the husband of Mary, who gave birth to Jesus, who is called the Messiah. So this didn't have me read the whole thing, but you can see it's a lineage of Abraham to David, and from the exile to the Messiah. And it starts in verse 1 and goes all the way down to the Messiah in 16. But you noticed in 5, Salmon fathered Boaz through Rahab. So Rahab was the mother of Boaz, and then all through the lineage, we get all the way down to the birth of Jesus. All right. Accepted and married. After the destruction of Jericho, Rahab lived with the Israelites. Although working as a prostitute is acceptable for her native culture, the Israelites do not approve. Yet she is shunned or not. I'm crooked. Oh my goodness. Me and this stand. I'm not going to be able to use this stand anymore. It is not working. Yet she is not shunned or shamed. Her story in the book of Joshua ends there, but we learn a bit more in the book of Matthew. The book of Matthew starts out with the genealogy of Jesus. The passages selected for today's reading highlight Rahab's place in the family tree. Most scholars claim it is the Rahab of Jericho who eventually finds love and marries Salmon, an Israelite. It is nice to know she was accepted into the Israelite clan, settled into married life, and had a happier ever after. God chooses Rahab, our unconventional hero who initially does not worship the God of Abraham, to be an important person in Christian history. Several generations later, through Rahab, comes Jesus. Rahab does not seem like a typical hero, but God chooses the one whose heart is willing to help, even if she does not understand the significance she will play. So that stood out to me because that shows she was not a believer of Jesus to begin with, but he still used her. God will use whoever he wants to. He doesn't have to use just the pastor who's at church. He doesn't have to use just the person with, 100% attendance in Sunday school. He will use anyone, whether you're a believer or not a believer. He can use that person to do his will. Reflection number 1. Why do you think Rahab stays to live with the Israelites? I think she stays because she knows that they spared her, and she saw that what they said was real, that their God was real. Number 2, Rahab's movement from pagan life to worshiping God is accompanied by leaving everything behind. Is anything in your life a remnant of a time when you were less devoted to your faith, and what can you let go of to move closer to God? This one can be something major, but it also can be something little. So for me, I was always like, we listen to Christian music in the car. I have a Christian music playlist, but I also still had my secular music playlist. And they would also like loop around. Thank you for the heart. They would also loop around. And so like it would, I'd play a Christian song and then my playlist would play a not Christian song. And I didn't really see anything wrong with it for a really long time. And then I was convicted to let the worldly music go. And I went through and I deleted every single secular song off of my playlist. I still have Christmas music, but it's Christmas music. And then I have only my, I call it my worship music playlist, but only my Christian music. And I don't listen to anything else unless, something's on at the grocery store and I can't help it because I'm at the grocery store. But that was something for me that I was like, you have to let that go because, certain songs are tied to certain memories of things that you did or were involved in or somewhere that you were. And songs also like bring out emotions. And I was the type of person, like I could listen to a song that's like, about, somebody being mad and they're going to get revenge. Then I'm like, yeah, woo, let's go. And I didn't want to feel that stuff anymore. So I let that go. Also like books, other than like Christian books like this, or I recently just had a friend that shared with me like Christian authors that write, other than like Bible study type books. I kind of quit like reading altogether, a little bit because I'm in college. Sorry, there's a fly right here. And I don't have a ton of time, but second, because like the things I wanted to read, I like to read, I felt convicted about because none of it, I was spending time doing that. None of it was building my relationship with God. And so I was like, I can only read these. That's it. So that's just 2 things for me. Yeah, the only like non-Christian books that we even have in the house are like the kids' books, obviously like the children's books, and then Jess's collection of Nicholas Sparks, minus a few books that we have gotten lost. I think we've let people borrow them or something. But I don't even know, other than a children's book or a textbook, I don't know what the last book was that I read that was not a Christian book. And that I accidentally saved. I saw a video that had you in it. And I just wanted to say your story, your testimony touched my heart, and that's awesome. And so I just want you to know there's a ton of Christian creators just in this live, but there's a ton of Christian creators here on TikTok, and if you just get connected with the right group, you'll have all kinds of support. So if you're still here, I don't know if I saw you pop in, but then I don't know if you're still here. If you're still here, if you want to shoot me a message, I I would love to like help you connect with others too, so that you can just have a big support system. Yeah, canceling your Kindle Unlimited in the middle of the night. Yeah. So now that's all I want is I want things that are going to deepen my relationship with God, right? Question number 2. Nope, that was question number 2. Number 3. How does God's choice to use Rahab as an integral part of his plan show that her life choices in Jericho do not define who she is, and that God can utilize anyone for his plans no matter what? And I think I've already kind of touched on this. God doesn't care who you are, what you've done, who your family is, none of that. He can use you for whatever he wants to. All right. Next, we are doing, I'm going to do, there's 2 different sections. I'm going to do Hebrews first because that's what comes next in the Bible. And that'll help me keep track. Hebrews 11, verse 31. Let me find it. By faith, Rahab the prostitute welcomed the spies in peace and didn't perish with those who disobeyed. And then the other section is James chapter 2, verses 24 through 26. You see that a person is justified by works and not faith alone. In the same way, wasn't Rahab the prostitute also justified by works in receiving the messengers and sending them out by a different route? For just as the body without the spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead. Putting faith to work. Rahab's faith and courage are discussed twice many years later in the New Testament. The actions Rahab performs are called works, according to James 2, 24 through 26. She performs these works because of her faith in God. She could have sat back with the knowledge she had about God and escaped with her family. Instead, she hides the spies and sends the Jericho men on a false mission. Rahab models the idea that you need action with your faith to be righteous. Paul, the author of Hebrews, explains that in addition to having faith in God, Rahab also welcomed the spies in peace. The ESV translation calls it a friendly welcome. She is the only one who offers peace among the people of Jericho, who honor false gods and use child sacrifice in their religion. Her peace, along with her faith, saves her. The fact that Rahab's actions are remembered well after her death is a testament to her character. She has a growing connection to God in her heart that motivates her to start with peace, then move to action. Rahab is truly a model of courage, trust, leadership, and redemption. This crooked camera is driving me bananas, y'all. I'm so sorry. Hey, Mama and Angie. I was looking to see who hopped in while I was in here. Karen Kingsbury. I will look that up. All right. So this is talking about faith without works is dead. And I actually one of the classes I just finished for school, I go to a Christian university, so we have to take the Old Testament and the New Testament, and this was my New Testament semester, and it just ended. And actually, one of the things that we had to write a small essay about was what that meant, what it meant to have faith without works or works without faith, and is that possible to have those things and still be considered righteous? And it's not. I mean, you can have all the faith in the world, but if you don't put it into any kind of action, how do you know? And in the same way, like, you can't just do good deeds and get to heaven. You have to have the faith too. So faith and works, they go together. And that's what she did. She was, first of all, kind to these people who were strangers when no one else was. And then she talked to them and she put her faith in the God that they shared with her. And then she put the works into action because she hid them. She didn't give them over to the guards that came looking for them, and kind of put them on a different path and helped them get to where they needed to get. Right. Head knowledge versus application of the word. Exactly. You can I mean, Satan knows the word. He knows it. He knows it. He knows all of it. But that doesn't mean that he's getting into heaven. Right. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Question number 1. Why is this concept of faith plus works, which Rahab demonstrates, so important, and what does it look like in your own life? We just talked about that. Question number 2. Where do you think the peace Rahab gives to the spies comes from? How can you invite that kind of peace into your own life and also bring it to others, including strangers? I mean, I'm not really sure where it come from for her. I mean, maybe because she was a prostitute. And so that probably like put her on the outside as far as like in her own, with her own people. And she was a woman who ran a business. So that was probably, different as well. And so she was used to being different. She was used to, maybe being an outcast or looked down upon or not trusted completely. Right. And she had to have heard about these people. She had told back in Joshua, she was saying like, we've heard about you guys. We've heard about what your God has done. And so, those wheels were probably already like turning, like, is this God real? And so that's how she was able to like, I'm going to be nice to these guys and see, at least hear them out and see what they've got to say. And then, she went from there. All right. Now, day 7 does not have any scripture with it. It's just kind of like key insights from everything that we've read. And it has action items. I'm going to go ahead and read the action items first. How does Rahab's story model the importance of acceptance? Do you accept others? Ask God to help you see others through his eyes, to be more accepting, and be intentional this week and beyond to be accepting of other people. Many people have experienced trauma in their lives. If you have, consider seeking help to release it. Start looking for a special helper this week. You can start by looking for a referral to your local church. And then they list like some therapy places. And I don't know if these are still an option because I don't know how old this book is, but one of them is therapyforchristians.com. Rahab isn't afraid, even though she is in a dangerous situation. Most of us experience fear occasionally. Read Psalm 46, 1-3, and Psalm 23, 4. How can these verses help you the next time you are afraid? And then it asks you like every week to record your thoughts in a journal. And then the key insights that we can take away from Rahab's story. Rahab illustrates her courage by risking death if she is found out. Her bravery and quick decisions seem rooted in her desire to grow closer to God, whom she has heard of but knows little about. Today, it's much easier for us to learn about God, but how are we willing to make even minor sacrifices to grow closer to him? Rahab solves problems and improvises in her story, creating a swift plan to hide the spies and throw off the Jericho men. She is smart and quick thinking. Rahab's story gives us a beautiful picture of redemption, as her desire to know God saves her from unspeakable horror and the corruption of her own culture's religion and guides her to become one of God's people. That first one really stuck out to me because back then, puzzle piece popped up. Just kidding. Let me fix that. Back then, what they learned of God was like word of mouth, stories just kind of, traveling around of what God had done. And she was able to still have that level of faith that God was who all these people were saying that he was, and that, God's people were going to take over, and that these people were, men of their word, and they would come back and protect her and her family. But that was back then. Now, it's not so hard for us to learn about God. We have Bible studies like this that break everything down. We have Bibles upon Bibles, all kinds of versions to break it down the way we want to break it down. We've got people sharing the word on TikTok. We've got, podcasts. Most every church service is streamed online in some form or fashion. There's all of this information coming in, all of these ways that we can learn about God, but we sometimes don't even have like an ounce of that kind of faith to be like, well, if this God is who he says he is, then I'm gonna be okay. Like she did. We have all of the information. We have all the stories. I mean, at this point, she was in the beginning part of the Bible. There was all this other stuff to still happen after her that she didn't even know about yet. And we have all of this information of all the miracles, all the times that he was faithful, but yet we still can't have the tiniest bit of faith in that God is who he says he is sometimes. And that just, that stuck out to me. Right, we have to get to know him, not just learn about him. Exactly. But I think sometimes we get caught up in all the learning, and we want to be able to recall every Bible verse, and want to be able to know every Bible story. We want to know all the things that we miss the getting him in here. We want to get all of him up here, and we miss the getting him in here. If that makes sense. All right. Well, if anybody has anything to add, if anybody wants to hop up in a box, let me know. Oops, I'm on the wrong side. Send a request down here, and I'll put you up there for a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and start talking about next week in case nobody wants to hop up here. Next week is my favorite woman of the Bible, my absolute favorite. It is on Deborah. And we will be in Judges. Her story is in Judges chapter 4. There's one Bible verse in Romans that we're going to read, but everything else is from Judges chapter 4, and then we jump into chapter 5 for a little bit. But Deborah's my favorite. So I'm really excited about Deborah. I won't feel sad if I have to do Deborah all by myself next week because I love Deborah. Deborah's my lady. So thank you. I'm gonna be honest, Mama, you missed it at the beginning. I really was leaning towards not going on today, just because I was, not that I was feeling down, but I was like, Jess isn't here. I'm here with the kids. I don't have school this weekend. My usual people aren't able to make it to my live today, and so I just kind of felt, wah. But Jess kicked me in the pants and told me to get on here, so here I am. But thank all of you for joining. We will be back on Monday night. Jess will be going live through his Facebook, and I will be going live through my TikTok. And we are going to be doing our couples devotion. I don't think I have the book. The book, along with this book, I have a link in my bio to my Amazon storefront. And you can get the book that we're doing on Saturdays, and you can also get the books that we're doing on Monday. It's not just for couples, it is a couples devotional, but if you are, in a relationship where you're going to get married, you are, just boyfriend, girlfriend, you don't have anybody, but you think you might want to later, or honestly, there's some really good information in there just for like having good friendships with people. If you are in any type of relationship with any human being, it's probably good information. Also, Jess and I spill all of our tea about everything in our marriage, and Jess gets thrown under the bus sometimes. So it's worth watching just for that. But that'll be Monday at 7 here on my TikTok, or if you want to be on Facebook, it's on Jess's Facebook. So anyways, thank you guys for coming, and I'll see y'all Monday night at 7.